Chapter 1. Running for his life at top speed, despite all odds, he hiked his long animal hide garment up under his armpits. Buck naked from the waist down, he was barely keeping pace with his prettier-than-ever mate. Women just look much better when they're scared, he thought. He started to grasp her wrist, taking hold of the robust, hippopotamus tooth bracelet he'd given her that afternoon as a token of his unwavering love. Gathering up what little strength was left in him, after their arduous rendezvous, he managed at last to pull her alongside him while remembering his latest feat, how he'd ingeniously and single-handedly heaved that giant hippo out of the water 3 days earlier. His survival instinct never failed him. Making the most of a decisive kick to her right shin, followed by a light, gentle push on her shoulder, the upward slope taking care of the rest, he was now again ahead, guaranteeing her a sudden and rapid death. But he still couldn't understand why women always had to make so much noise in so many situations. Hissing louder and louder, a saber-toothed tiger crept up from behind, closing in, ready to jump in for the kill at any moment, her long, curved, canine teeth wide open, indicating her instinctive need to hunt. She would also have to be fed. He resigned himself to the fact that you can't always do everything in life, both give and save a life. Besides, what's more valuable to society than a 30-year-old male, his guts told him. Clearly ahead of his mate, he stopped at the top of a small hill, desperate to find the whereabouts of the tiger. He could see that the predator had seized his mate and was silently devouring its prey, gnawing with difficulty each time it crushed a chunk of soft cartilage, blood sputtering and lingering on its whiskers. He concluded that some cats are simply a lot quieter than others. At any rate, he'll come back later to crack open her bones and get the marrow. He loved the tissue of the spongy portion in the bones. Catching his breath, he crouched down to pluck a handful of wild raspberries and replenished himself, arduously admiring their perfectly shaped droplets, casually eating them as he trotted down the hill toward his city-state several miles away. Walking backward at times, he gazed at the burning red clouds and fiery sun setting behind the hillside he had just crossed, amazed at all that nature can offer. He'd have to get more giant hippo teeth soon, he thought, if he wanted to get laid again, as this may well be the only way. It was perhaps the only flaw women had, he concluded. It was becoming more and more difficult because all his friends did the same thing, and this hippo tooth frenzy compelled every living male in the Velgan archipelago to offer more hippo teeth to outbid unlucky competitors, making them all break their backs. Taking care not to be seen, walking head down with his animal hide now fully in place, Adtenatus entered the city. He was back in his mother's house. She was the head of the family, the domina mater familias, and the gentlest woman he had ever met. He knew that tomorrow morning, he would have to clean parts of her multi-story house, which was comprised of many wings with small rooms. This would include dusting the large staircases and light wells, filtering clean water, and making sure the drainage system was fully operational. Velgan feminae detested bad odors. The entrance was particularly elaborate and was cleaned twice a day. It required the utmost attention as the stone walls were plastered and decorated with frescoes painted directly onto the damp lime paste. They often needed to be changed and repainted, depending on the latest fads and the owner's quirks. When you opened the front door, the main fresco of 4 Velgan feminae chatting and sharing a light meal on the beach could be seen. 2 of the feminae giggled as the wind blew gently in their hair. In the background, the waves had been intentionally flattened by the painter. Adtenatus's chores would almost always end with cleaning the most important room in the house, the Kalina, the most spacious room in the house with numerous kitchen counters perfectly laid out. Only the balneo, the bathroom, was somewhat similar in size. No Velgan feminae could possibly go to sleep at night with a dirty Kalina. Adtenatus's wife would come to pick him up after lunch the next day to do some urgent handiwork in her house, specifically, unblocking the bathroom sink, and he would be able to see his son. For the moment, Adtenatus was lying comfortably on his single bed just below his mother's large and luxurious apartment, peacefully reflecting on his catch of the day. One of Velgan's marvelous wonders, its moon, was clearly visible from his bedroom window, perfectly exposed because there was no glass. Velgans lacked the necessary technology to make panes. He often did not bother to draw the thin, semi-transparent linen curtain at night, as Velgan feminae often revealed their true colors only after sunset. Safe in the dark under a brilliant starry sky, he could observe Velgan feminae taking their never-ending baths and performing their nightly rituals. That night, yoga was on the menu. After taking a few pills made of natural superfoods to ward off degenerative diseases and applying various lotions and oils to her hair and body, his neighbor, Curail, slathered quite a lot of Velgan crepito on her face, just like they all did every night. It was a moisturizer made of non-animal products with nourishing ginseng and other natural ingredients, which was mass-produced in the city. Now she was doing the halasana, the rather long and awe-inspiring plow pose. The delectable view in the window let him gradually drift off to sleep. The next day, he kissed his elderly mother goodbye in the proper Velgan manner, by holding both of her hands, then moving her arms up and down as if he were flapping two oversized wings. At this point, Adtenatus's wife, Climaxpa, arrived right on time, barely smiling. The couple left the house and walked through the orderly, spotless streets. Overlooking the sea, the dazzling city had been built on a series of small mounds that filled every Velgan femina with a deep sense of fear, protection, and wonder. Neither entirely urban nor entirely rural, it was both city and countryside, which made it an ideal place for its inhabitants. Charming aqueducts and neat underground clay pipes were everywhere and fed into numerous public fountains. They satisfied all personal uses as a gurgling stream of the purest volcanic water crossed the city, enabling all Velgan feminae to stay almost forever young. Zigzagging through the winding streets, the couple strolled alongside Adtenatus's sister's radiant three-story house. Only Velgan feminae had access to property rights to own a house in Velgan City, he remembered. High in the sky, the sun followed their every step, casting no shadows. It was springtime, and the spectacular Velgan Florentes games were only a week away, approaching at full throttle. Above the couple, old Velgan feminae were positioned near their favorite windows, sticking their heads out, bobbing them back and forth. Their elegant, sagging double chins protruded while they gleefully sang old songs and threw dried petals at passers-by, perfuming the streets and countless rows of linens that a few sons and grandsons were still hanging. Bits of news were always flying by in Velgan City, traveling from window to window at lightning speed. Hence, printing the news was completely unnecessary and, more importantly, mostly inaccurate. Had it only been for all that perfectly tuned cacophony, Adtenatus might have been able to keep on walking without pretending to hear anything. Yet accompanying them were other Velgan feminae who vigorously played the pluma underscore, a wind instrument made from the long, soft feather of a chicken's neck, its tiny holes covered by the women's lengthy, slender fingers. Echoing deep into the narrow streets, you could hear Alla Florentes demi-homens, vestra femina bene balnata, extra extenta apud no picta, unexcitable and most hospitable coquette. 30 days of interplay and she gives herself away. If 2 trophies they get, their wives will be their pet. Adtenatus's wife was singing alongside him, her arms wide open and her legs on point, dancing a succession of slow, soft, and sensual movements. One of her legs extended behind the other, both knees perfectly straight, and she took a delicate whiff of Adtenatus's hair, now covered with a multitude of colorful petals and resembling a potpourri. They soon arrived in front of his wife's majestic dwelling. It was the best in the neighborhood, he thought. Even better than his sister's house. Each time it was the same story all over again. He would suddenly stop, look up, and marvel. He couldn't help noticing all his work on the house, the result of a trade passed down from generation to generation among the men in his family. They worked in a rather haphazard and careless manner, violently slapping on the pinkish-colored tiles of the roof, for example, but Adtenatus had handled them delicately as they were very sensitive to the touch. Each time, he would recall the double-sided marble columns that sturdily held up the entire living room. On one column was a fresco of his wife's obsessive hesitation regarding which garment she would buy, slightly bending down to pay for it. The other column depicted his wife putting on natural lipstick, her egg-shaped mouth slightly open. With that in mind, Adtenatus often forgot about the cooling system his ancestors had created with adulterated water. It still circulated through one of the load-bearing walls and cooled his spouse's bedroom chamber. As a result, Climaxpa wouldn't stay hot for too long. Her mansion was built around a spacious atrium with a small, rectangular pool in the center for collecting rainwater, the impluvium. Entering the house with his hood on, Adtenatus washed his uncovered feet in the vestibulum pediluvium. Then they held hands, his wife gently stroking the bottom part of his thumb, leading him all the way to the atrium. In the impluvium, a dozen prophetic sacred golden comets casually pecked at flax seeds, pausing at times, peering blankly right and left as their claws dipped in the water of a submerged stair. As soon as the couple sat, their son prodigy rushed out of one of the doors, taking the longest run-up possible. He joyfully jumped over the impluvium, scaring away many of the chickens, which could not even fly through the opening in the ceiling under such intense pressure. He landed on one foot and then leaped onto his father's shoulders, where he sat comfortably. He plucked the thin, multicolored petals from his father's hair, slowly tossing them into the impluvium, one by one: blue, pink, purple, red, white, yellow, orange, green, lavender. This was to the delight and awe of the 7 remaining hens, which had landed on the water after flapping their wings a couple of times while the others timidly retreated a few feet from the basin. Anticipating each ripple, enthralled yet afraid, a sacred golden comet would start bouncing up and down in the impluvium whenever a scented petal fell in the basin. Once she reached her highest height, she dutifully cackled a loud, high-pitched, harmonious note, which corresponded to the color of each petal. Prodigy, still perched on Adtenatus's shoulders, appeared even taller now that his father was standing. The child mimicked an orchestral conductor, his right hand extended, waving about the dried drumstick of a sacred golden comet he used as the conductor's baton. His left hand carefully picked certain colored petals, then cheerfully threw them by the handful, and he nodded his head in time to the music, just like the chickens. On Prodigy's left, his mother was playing a harp made from hard wood and sacred golden comet's sinews, her hands perfectly accompanying the chickens' various ascents and descents. The chickens that had jumped away from the impluvium quickly found their way back into the scramble, one of them incessantly pecking at the marble floor while 4 aerobic hens repeatedly stepped up and down from the only submerged stair, uttering a soft and pleasant cluck, 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 doubling their effort after every step up and waiting for their turn to jump into the basin. Firmly holding his son's dangling feet while sweating profusely under his animal hide, his sweat dripping into the impluvium, Adtenatus was puzzled, wondering how sacred golden comets could manage to spend so much time in the water without even getting their crests wet. Climaxpa, singing and playing the harp, sat relaxed on the slippery edge of the basin, dipping both feet into the water and joyfully warbling a renowned Velgan invocation. Our golden comets who live on the ground, your music room we deify. Our sinking baby faces will never crumble. Our soon-to-be withered wings never renounce. Our determination never wavers. Always pecking, never hungry, we will live for eternity. All impatiently awaiting our savior. If my man comes in handy, I'll give him my trophy. In a great upward leap, we will climb to the highest height. To reach the impluvium. Amidst so much activity, the sacred water soon started to boil underneath a bed of wilted petals. The golden comets bounced higher and higher, becoming more and more fond of the painstaking heat, as Climaxpa played the harp more intensely. Their high-pitched cackling became louder and louder. Suddenly, there was an eruption. Gigantic, multicolored fireworks of petals went flying into the air, perfuming the molten golden comets. In a grand finale, they breathlessly flapped their wings one last time, jerking their heads left and right at a low angle, gasping and abandoned, uttering a fading orgasmic sound as their beaks slowly froze wide open before falling numb into the impluvium. Alas, as pleasant and agreeable as it was for everyone, there was no real eruption for the harpist Climaxpa. 2 sacred golden comets, which were hurt and slightly burnt in the process, rested shamefully in the shade while the whole family drifted off for a short while to take a break and enjoy the heat. Sputtering and coughing due to all the dispersing, vaporous heat, Kalino, one of Climaxpa's husbands, furiously waved his apron in the air to fight his way through all the steam that laboriously seeped through the compluvium, the opening in the ceiling. He jealously exited the kitchen, his large moustache protruding. Then he entered the atrium crying out, "UBS, Climaxpa! UBS? Where are you?" Still coughing from the intense heat, he uttered, "Climaxpa, what's cooking? My Kalina is about to catch fire, and I can't even heat a single nut." Seemingly on his last leg, both hands rubbing his neck as mucus slowly drained into his throat, Kalino tripped alongside the pool, getting painfully closer to the alabaster bench on which the intertwined trio sat restfully. Adtenatus was just coming to his senses, opening one eye, yawning widely, and squinting. Then he warmly slapped one of Kalino's powerful shoulders. "Hey, hello, old Ursus horribilis californicus. You look like you haven't eaten anything in ages, ya clanging old pot." "That much is true, Adtenatus, quite true, old red Sierra Nevada Velps Nikata," Kalino retorted. Then, bracing himself, he formally announced, "Everything is ready. Climaxpa, just like you asked. No added sweetness, no wheat, no modified cat's piss, no frying, no heating, no nothing. And of course, no dairy products. Naturally, Climaxpa, there are sesame, sunflower, chia, and squash seeds, your favorites, my delicious Angelus." Looking down shamefully at his right paw, he then added, "Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to go home." Annoyed and feeling smothered, Climaxpa sensed she could not enjoy a single minute without being beckoned for something. "I'll take you to your mom in a bit because I need my beauty walk anyway." Lightly waving her hand, she said, "Now run along and wait for me. I'll find you. Find me, find me. The last time I waited, I stayed up all night, alone in the house next to stacks of clean lingerie and your decrepit, cross-eyed stuffed animal," said Kalino. "Adtenatus and I still have things to do," she replied curtly. Meanwhile, now fully awake, Prodigy climbed delicately onto a larger-than-life fowl statue, and then jumped down onto his giant unicycle made of one hefty, soapstone symphonic wheel whose jingling tune changed when he went backward. Whooshing past Kalino and blissfully riding around and around the impluvium without stopping, Prodigy flapped his arms frenetically in the balmy air as if he were about to take off. Wearing a smirk, he mimicked the chickens and prevented them from escaping. Using both hands, he grabbed a golden comet that was attempting to fly away, tenderly pet her beautiful streaks, and then kissed her before launching her at full speed in Kalino's direction. Already on edge and deafened by the melody, Kalino barely dodged the panic-stricken, screaming chicken by hiding behind his moustache, slouching his shoulders, and turning around at the last minute. This enabled Prodigy to land haphazardly onto Kalino's back to stop him from marching forward. He had braced himself for impact, and Kalino's shoulders stopped him from crashing his unicycle, thus maintaining some kind of safe equilibrium. "Incredibile! Non possum credere! Non posso crederlo!" Kalino shouted angrily. Then, teasing Kalino, Prodigy took out the sacred drumstick he always carried in his pocket. He rubbed it slowly under Kalino's nose, jerking it left and right like a horsehair bow, pretending to play the violin on Kalino's well-groomed moustache, which he pulled at full length, strand by strand, as he made soft, repetitive, back-and-forth jerks on his unicycle pedals to make music. "Ah, ah, ah, food, bonum sibum. It smells so good. Ow, 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 ouch, ouch, ouch. Stop it, come on. Don't play with my salutum filius." Kalino mumbled while Prodigy continued what he was doing and sang in his soprano voice. "Alla Florentins demi-homins. Mustachio cuckold doodle dude Ursus Kalino. Will make us a wonderful pastry. To secure a meaty trophy and avenge his wife's cuckoldry." After having fed Kalino with scraps of seeds hidden within his bushy moustache, Prodigy rubbed the drumstick on Culino's teeth to make sure he got all his daily nutrients without giving him any meat. Now Prodigy was pinching Culino's nose and pushing the tip upward, playing the violin even more fervently. Bonum sibum, Prodigy hummed. That's good food. Ow, 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 ouch, ouch, ouch. That's it. I can't take it anymore. Non-possum, I'm leaving, Culino said. Prodigy chuckled, then went backward and released him, the tiny bells on his wheel accompanying his every movement. Climaxpa put her arms around Adtenatus's waist for a while and gazed fervently at his truest, most pleasant, and at times, only visible part, his eyes. Then, she held his hand, her middle finger intimately caressing her partner's upper knuckle as she eased him passionately in her direction. Smiling, Climaxpa led Adtenatus slowly toward her bedroom chamber with long strides, walking on point, dancing. Her right leg extended forward. Her left leg followed in a sort of three-step chassé that led the couple to explore each room of the house. All the while, Adtenatus joined her dances in a backward two-step chassé, allowing them to spend much time together in each room. And so they went in a moving embrace, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. A bit absorbed by her gliding legs, Adtenatus looked at them surreptitiously, concealing his stares as he certainly did not want to be branded as a pervert. In fact, this was the kind of person his wife hated most. The couple amorously climbed the stairs, crossed the bedroom, and then went straight to Climaxpa's spacious balneo that offered a great view of the beautiful, sunlit city. At this point, she let go of his hand and gave him a reason to follow her. To motivate him, she leapt into a majestic pas de ciseaux, fully exposing her womanhood, then landed delicately back on the floor. No longer used to getting aroused by his wife so swiftly, Adtenatus sighed arduously, and his eyes glinted. Perceiving her husband's enthusiasm, she immediately executed an even more perfect pas de ciseaux. Landing farther away, Climaxpa took hold of the bathroom sink, the original culprit. Supporting herself on the sink with all her weight, she proceeded to do several grand battements, which inevitably sent Adtenatus through the roof. Sadly, Adtenatus came back to his senses and the task at hand. After kneeling in front of the sink, he looked up with a forced smile lingering on his face and uttered, "So this is my job. Adtenatus, I've wanted you to get rid of all this musty stench for me and set me free. I can't take it anymore, non-possum," she lamented. Adtenatus was anxious yet pleased to see she had been able to wait so long. It was true, the foul odor was not suitable to be breathed. To his deepest regret, he couldn't hold his nose and do the work at the same time because he was strenuously screwing and unscrewing the pipe with both hands. It was all in vain at first. It would not release, even after moving it in all possible directions. The bathroom exuded an ocean-like atmosphere. It was used day and night by its owner because, by definition, smelly Velgan feminae were greatly frowned upon and were not allowed to meet in public or socialize. Adtenatus was taking care of the drain under the sink while simultaneously doing his very best to loosen the whole thing with his right hand. He pulled out strands of body hair along with a densely packed, rich, stagnant blend, at times a bit doughy, of sticky coconut, safflower, cocoa fluids, rose hip oil, and apple juice. Leaning above him, Climaxpa was giving him very precise instructions. She straightforwardly commanded, "Be careful, Adtenatus, don't break it. It's fragile. Hold the tailpiece lower, aimer, slow down and smile. Don't you forget to clean that drain. Yes, yes, yes. And smile." Shortly after, on a more pleasant note, Climaxpa added, "Oh yeah, that's it, my foxy babe. Don't stop." Bracing herself and standing perfectly upright, Climaxpa yelled at the top of her lungs, "Oh, oh, my grand, luxurious, pedestal sink. Oh, my cheap, meaningless, circular materialistic life. Oh, 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 my goods. It's coming." Actively working and compelled to smile as he was pumping the drain pipe, Adtenatus was barely able to keep an eye open when he accidentally and suddenly released the lock nuts. A geyser-like shower of clogged-up Velgan crepito blew into his face and hair, striking the center of his open eye. It trickled down gently, lingered, and clung to his cheek and mouth. He thought the taste was shockingly pleasant and not the least bit worse than the bite and the smell. For an instant that seemed to last forever, Climaxpa was utterly speechless, unable to move her lips. She was motionless, yet felt like she was flying and resting in a peaceful ocean of sparsely clustered white clouds. After a while, speaking in a soft voice, she feebly shushed Adtenatus, "Shush. I need to enjoy the quiet for a bit." Then she finally exclaimed with a great sense of satisfaction, "Ah, I feel so much better." Softly waving her hand in the air, she said, "Please carry me to my sunken bathtub, fill it with shaved strawberry soap, then turn on the water, Foxy. I can't move or feel anything, non-possum. Shush, shush. I feel so good." Climaxpa was relaxing for a while in her bath as Adtenatus sat on the edge of the bathtub, attending to her every need. "Ah, it feels so good to stroke your soft fur, Foxy." Patting his hand, grasping his wrist, and speaking delicately, she added, "Don't move, babe. Right now, I feel so insecure and lonely. I've lost all of my almighty energy." Her hand crept up slowly from the water as their fingers tightly interlocked and pulsated together. The couple paused lazily, breathed in and out together, their heads propped on one another's. They started to feel for each other profoundly, connecting on a deeper level. It was as if they had only one expanding soul growing continuously into two caring and selfless bodies belonging to the same person, becoming comfortable for just an instant yet vulnerable and honest with each other. Turning to gaze into his eyes, she said tenderly, "Adtenatus, I have a sense that this is our moment. I can feel it. I truly want us to win a trophy. I really need to be proud of you. Besides, we need the prestige, and I don't want to be too absorbed by the approaching husband season. I think I may want just you." Becoming more and more assertive, she began to show that she meant business. "You've got a week to get ready and to come up with one of your brilliant inventions, the kind we respectable Velgan femini all want and need without even knowing it." Her words were to be taken seriously. She continued, "It would make Velgan owners, prodigy, and me so proud, my handy, demi-masculum homen." As she was speaking, she inadvertently splashed water and soapy bubbles on Adtenatus's face each time she stroked the water. Then, fervently waving her hand in the air in a single, swift, and powerful motion while stretching her arm to its fullest and pointing her index finger toward the ceiling as if the sky was her only limit, she tensed her jaw and shouted, "You'll make us all feel good, agile, clean, and empowered." Patting his hand amorously, she added softly, "You will stay here and work on it for a week. Don't stray far from the house, Foxy." She looked up at Adtenatus's face and couldn't stop giggling and snickering. Waving her free hand in front of Adtenatus's face, then briskly unlocking her knuckles from his, she intentionally splashed more water in his face, and then added as she laughed, "Now you can go and wash that Velgan crepito off your face. You look ridiculous. It's a good thing I never make you wear mascara. Otherwise, you would look like a white-mouthed clown." Ha! 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 An hour passed, and Adtenatus caught sight of his wife taking Kalino towards his mother's house. They were not holding hands, as Kalino seemed to be complaining. Adtenatus went back to work for the rest of the day, then he and his wife ate Kalino's meal at sunset. The moonlight streaming in was casting streaks of soft blue hues on his crimson garment. Afterward, he went to bed in the basement, but there were no windows, so it was difficult for him to fall asleep.